Hi, my name is Alusan Barry. Welcome to the second part of this introduction to logic. Like I said earlier, what you have to keep in mind is that logic is more like a prescriptive science. It is not what you may observe every single day, but it is the ideal, okay, what we should be aiming for as much as possible. So logic is about the study of reasoning based on principles. So when you are reasoning, when you are making arguments based on facts and principles, you can't justify that you are using logic. Okay. So we are saying Aristotle is actually like has been referenced to be the father of logic. Okay, like thousands of years ago in Greece, you have this old man who's tried to codify and set up the basic principles of logic of what constitutes good and clear thinking. Okay, I think there's forms of logic called Aristotelian logic. I think these are mostly like the syllogisms I was giving you in the first part of this lesson. Okay, now we are going to move our attention to talking about the the differences between formal and informal logic, and then we shall briefly look at the importance of logic and who uses it. You might be surprised. Right. So, formal logic is different from informal logic. These kind of things like when you hear somebody make an argument and you raise your eyebrows, like the example of um, the unemployment and crime rates, people confusing correlation and causation. That kind of thing can be evaluated using informal logic, which we call critical thinking. Okay, um, how can someone make the conclusion that because unemployment and crime rate are rising together because there is a correlation between them, they are happening at the same time, and someone draws the conclusion that, oh, so therefore unemployment must be causing the crime rates in the city, when actually there could be other factors that could be causing the crime rates other than the rise in unemployment. Okay, we have so informal logic is more about dealing with day-to-day language. Okay, the arguments we make on a daily basis on a bus, at school, while playing with our friends, arguing with our colleagues. Okay, while formal logic is more about using like principles, like let's say symbols, mostly like sorry, symbols and scientific like like we try to codify arguments and try to use symbols in evaluating their truth or their validity. Okay, so we and formal logic is divided into deductive logic. You don't need to know all of this for the WASC, but I do think like you need this sort of context. Okay, so deductive reasoning is about making coming from the general to the specific. Okay, while like for inductive reasoning, we are coming from something specific that you observe and then you go to the general, right? So this is like the example I was giving about the Socrates being mortal, and this one mostly like the example I've been giving about unemployment and crime rates. Okay, here like for inductive reason, you have things like analogies. Oh, this thing happened. This is how something behaves. So therefore, this is how something else behaves in this context. Okay, making generalizations, right? Um, probabilistic reasoning, like when you use probabilities. Okay, this is all about inductive reasoning, like the chances something will happen. All right. So deductive reasoning is more about certainty. You want to be certain. Okay. So often, like mathematical proofs are both. Anyway, when we come to deductive reasoning in the next lessons, we'll be looking at deductive reasoning in details. Okay, the differences between like a valid argument, a sound argument. Okay, an argument that follows with certainty, an argument that follows with probability, all these sorts of things. Okay, um, now let's and so fallacies are an extremely important thing we'll be looking at. Well, actually, we won't be looking at fallacies much for WASC. I'll be doing a separate video where I'll be dealing with fallacies, mostly for like maybe say university students who like to know more of these things. Okay. Okay. Now, the importance of logic. Why should you study logic in the first place? When you study logic, you will be able to recognize valid and invalid reasoning. In our daily lives, every moment we are constantly making arguments, we are constantly drawing conclusions, and we are constantly using things we consider facts to draw those conclusions. Okay? When you are grounded in logic, you'll be able to differentiate, to recognize when someone is reasoning using valid principles, when someone is reasoning based on invalid reasoning. Okay? Sorry. Um, it will also help you in becoming a problem solver. So when you are trying to solve problems, you have to be able to see what is valid, what is not valid, how we can draw an inference, a conclusion from a fact, or whether or not those facts themselves are true or not. So all of these things in becoming a problem solver, the skills you learn in logical reasoning will be extremely important. Okay, you'll be able to recognize confusing arguments like ambiguity. Sometimes people talk when when people try to manipulate you, whether this is marketers, politicians, or just anyone. People try to use ambiguous statements. When you are grounded in logic, you'll be able to abstract from those arguments, from the fuzzy thinking, and be able to see the problems or the flaws in their arguments. Okay, it will also help in becoming a critical thinker, right? You'll be able to, also aids in testing scientific proofs, right? Who uses logic? Everyone uses logic. Bankers, engineers, especially like electrical engineers, especially for deductive logic, symbolic logic, programmers, extremely important, computer scientists, they use logic a lot. I think there is even like logic programming, even. So it's basic, and this is basically what computers do. It's basically logic. Okay, mathematicians, of course, economists use logic, philosophers, lawyers, everyone uses logic. So logic is extremely, extremely important. Okay. In the next lessons, we shall be looking at logical statements, simple and compound statements, and when we say a statement is true or not true, the converse of that. We shall also be diving deeper into deductive and inductive logic, and we will be looking at some past examination questions and practice problems for the WASC. Okay. Until then, thank you very much for now.